out there. How you doing, everybody? My name's Kenny, and I'm back once again to start talking about some movies. I know it's been a while since we've seen each other. I've been super busy with work. I've also been doing a lot more streaming. Secret boss battle! Secret boss battle! But anyway, you didn't click on this video for any of that information. You want to know my thoughts on In a Violent Nature. Now, being a huge horror movie fan, this is absolutely 100% a movie that I've been looking forward to for a long time. A horror slasher that all takes place from the perspective of the killer. This sounds like a lot of fun. Now, before I learned too much about it, it seemed really gimmicky, but I'm okay with gimmicks. I don't mind. Well, I finally got a chance to sit and watch it. And I gotta tell you, this movie wasn't a gimmick. This movie was brilliant. I had so much fun with the premise of this movie that I didn't even care. There was no music, hardly any dialogue. It was just some guy walking through the forest. But none of that mattered. The movie was so ambitious. It just captivated me. You gotta understand, I grew up on these horror slasher movies. And let's face it, In a Violent Nature is basically Friday the 13th from Jason's perspective, and I've watched enough Friday the 13th movies to know exactly all the beats they're gonna hit. The main character teenagers go to some secluded area out in the woods, they do some drugs, they have some sex, and they get killed off one by one. What makes In a Violent Nature so unique is that while all that cliche teenager stuff's happening over here, we're watching the real main course, the killer walking around the forest over here. So all those long drawn out shots that are just following him, in my mind, I was visualizing all of those cliche tropes without having to watch them. It almost felt like I was watching two movies at once. The one that was on the screen in front of me and the one that was playing in my head, visualizing those teenagers doing all those stupid things. There were a couple of scenes that didn't follow the killer. The very first time was when the killer, by the way, I think the killer's name is Johnny, so I'll call him Johnny. So when Johnny finally comes across all those cliche victims sitting around a campfire one night, the camera actually leaves him for a while to focus on them while they share the story of Johnny's history.
Come on then, soft serve. What's the story?
Well, my uncle said it all started with this slow kid named Johnny.
The first time through, I kind of liked this moment. It was a way to get some exposition. But watching it again, I realized how much I really enjoyed spending time with Johnny. So I wish that in this moment, we could have followed Johnny maybe roaming around the house or maybe getting into their personal belongings, all while you're able to still hear their dialogue. But what we got was still good, so I still liked it. The second time we pull away from Johnny is at the very end of the movie when the final girl finally escapes. The camera kind of follows her around for a while. So I want to go back a bit. I did say I felt the movie was brilliant, and I stand by that. When I first put this movie on, I was expecting just some really stupid, gimmicky premise of a horror movie that I was just willing to have some fun with. But I didn't realize how well thought out it was. In the very first scene, the shot opens up staring out into the forest, or staring out into nature, if you will. There's also a frame as if to highlight, yes, this is the nature that you should be paying attention to. There's also some characters in this scene, but you never see them. You just hear their voices.
Oh, don't start with your crap, Aaron.
Well, you guys never heard of the White Pine Slaughter?
The what?
So even with speaking characters nearby, the camera still focuses on the nature, and that really set the tone for the entire movie. The characters here are only on screen enough to see that they take the locket that's hanging here in the foreground. It turns out that locket belonged to Johnny. And when they took it, some sort of mystical power awakens Johnny, and he actually rises out of his grave. He's literally birthed out of nature. And this is where I really started to realize the movie might be a little more nuanced than I thought it would be. And for the rest of the movie, we just follow Johnny walking around. Occasionally he'll kill somebody, but for the most part, you just hear him walking with his footsteps being part of all the nature sounds in the background. So Johnny really is a violent part of nature. And this aspect of the movie really impressed me. It made me obviously think of the Friday the 13th franchise and how Jason himself is part of nature. As far as I'm concerned, this is probably as good of a Friday the 13th remake as we're ever going to get. So like I said, he's mostly walking around and sometimes he kills. And the kills in this movie are actually fantastic. There was one kill scene that I was really impressed by, and I'm not quite sure how they did this, but there's obviously some CGI going on here. I just don't see how they went from this to this without CGI. I just don't see the CGI. One kill in particular has gotten a lot of attention. I'm going to be honest, this is the one kill that I didn't like as much. Yeah, it was really imaginative. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch. But for how subtle the rest of the movie was, especially just the slow-paced walking around, this was a bit much. I much rather prefer this kill.
Please, help!
Like I said, I don't know where the CGI starts and ends, but they did a great job with this kill. And the fact that it's all one shot, it just makes it so much more visceral. Here's another kill that's also very subtle. Johnny catches these couple girls hanging out on the dock from across the lake. And already I'm getting Friday the 13th Part 1 vibes. I'm imagining Kevin Bacon out on the docks while somebody's watching from a distance. Only this time we get to see that person watching from a distance. Anyway, after watching him for long enough, he just walks into the lake and eventually drowns one of them by pulling him into the water. The choice to keep the camera back and just stay on the shot for so long really built the suspense in a very unique way. And that tiny little squelch of a scream as she goes underwater, especially from such a far distance away, it just made me think of how fleeting a life can be. She's about to die, but that's all she could do to call for help. I already mentioned that towards the end of the movie, the camera pulls away from Johnny and it starts to follow the final girl. And in this moment, this is where a lot of the stress of a typical horror movie really shined through. You didn't know where Johnny was. You don't know if a machete was going to come flying out from behind a tree. It was just really nail biting towards the end. And the only way that this could have been made better is if we knew the characters better and I had some vested interest in this girl. But because of the fact we followed Johnny the whole time, I had no concern about her. I was just mostly kind of anticipating a jump scare. But I don't really find that to be a fault of the movie. The whole point was to not focus on the teenagers. So the fact that I didn't know who this girl was at the end, it didn't really bother me. But what I found most interesting about the camera suddenly following the final girl was at the very end when you discover that Johnny finally got his locket back. The same locket that was stolen at the very beginning. So really, the whole rampage of the entire movie was just Johnny trying to get his locket back. So at the very end, the reveal here shows you that once he got it back, he's no longer in existence and the camera is allowed to just follow whoever it wants to follow. I thought that was a really well thought out close to a fairly well thought out movie. So by the end, I was definitely applauding. I thought it was fantastic. I watched it again almost right away. There were a couple of flaws though with the movie that I wanted to address. But first, I want to invite you to check out my second channel. That's Too Bad About Kenny with the number 2. There, I live stream video games every single week. I've got live streams of Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown, RoboCop, Rogue City for you movie fans out there. Right now, I'm having a lot of fun with Paper Mario Thousand Year Door Remake. I haven't been able to buy food for my children since my husband turned into a pig. Now they're all so hungry. What should I do? Bacon? So stop by and check out some of my live streams. Who knows what I'll be playing next? So like I kind of brought up earlier, I wish that the camera never pulled away from Johnny in that campfire scene. I really think that the movie as a whole would have been much more effective if during that scene of exposition, we still followed Johnny as he made his rounds doing whatever he wanted to do. Maybe he would go through their things in their car. Maybe he would just stand there and watch them. Maybe he would kind of rummage through their house. Something. I would have appreciated actually following Johnny the whole time through. One of the biggest complaints about this movie is the fact that so much of it is just spent walking through the forest. And I do like it, although it would prevent me from watching the movie too often. Now, the first time Johnny's walking around, you hear dialogue of these two characters that are arguing.
Oh, yeah. That's what you need, you coward. Another man to do your dirty work.
Johnny eventually finds his way to where he hears the voices, and then we have a little kind of a cat and mouse chase where he has his first victim. And this is really one of the only cases where something like this happens. I really wish that while Johnny was walking around, he would come across more things. So I think a lot more of the, walking through the forest scenes could have been intercut with Johnny coming across things that maybe would help explain the plot. I don't know, maybe the site where he was killed in the first place. Maybe he could have had a little flashback there. Or maybe there's something else about his history that we can find out when he comes across a certain, landmark. Because even I admit, as much as I liked it, yeah, I could see how it would get boring watching him just go through the forest and go through the forest. So my complaints weren't that big of a deal. I still think it's a brilliant movie and probably one of the best horror movies I've watched in a very long time. Chris Nash directed this, and I never heard of the guy. But I really hope that he takes everything he learned from this movie, what worked well, and really emphasizes that for a sequel. And maybe it's not a direct sequel to Johnny. Maybe nobody takes his locket in number 2. Maybe it's a different horror villain, maybe one that takes place in the suburbs, maybe one that follows a deranged family of cannibals, or maybe a killer with the supernatural ability to get you in your dreams. The point is, there's just a myriad of places you could take a plot like this. I love the idea of following the villain through the entire movie, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Chris Nash can do next. So In a Violent Nature, I absolutely give it 2 big thumbs up. What a great horror movie. I can't wait for sequels, and I can't wait for other directors to start ripping off this idea. Thanks for watching, everyone. My name's Kenny. Goodbye. In a Violent Nature, he literally was nature. Get it?
Too bad about Kenny, huh? Life in a big city.